It's 3 in the morning and I'm hiding in a wooden shelter somewhere in the mountains of North Carolina. I'm not alone. Something is outside. I can hear it. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, circling the shelter. Crunch, crunch, crunch through the leaves. The rhythm is too steady, too patient. Like whatever's out there has all the time in the world. I'm pressed against the back wall, sleeping bag, pulled up to my chin, trying not to breathe too loud. My headlamp is off. My phone is off. I learned the hard way that light attracts attention. The footsteps stop. Silence. I count to 10, then 20. Nothing. Maybe it's gone. Then I hear it. Right outside the shelter opening. Not footsteps this time. Breathing. Low, wet, like something's dragging air through a throat that wasn't built for it. I don't move. I don't look. Rule number 7. If something follows you, don't acknowledge it. The breathing continues. 5 minutes. 10. Feels like hours. Then, finally, it moves away. The footsteps resume, fading back into the forest. I don't sleep the rest of the night. When the sun comes up, I pack my gear with shaking hands and get the hell out of there. That was 48 hours ago. Let me back up. My name is Alex Chen. 3 months ago, I quit my job, sold most of my stuff, and decided to thru-hike the Appalachian Trail. Seemed like a good idea at the time. 2,190 miles, Georgia to Maine. 5 to 7 months of walking through the wilderness, alone with my thoughts, away from screens, back to nature. That's what I thought I was signing up for. I was wrong. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I should start at the beginning. Before the rules. Before I understood what the trail really was. I worked in tech. Software developer for a startup in San Francisco. The kind of place with ping pong tables and free kombucha and a CEO who talked about changing the world while we built apps nobody needed. I was 28, burned out and realizing I'd spent the last 6 years staring at screens for 12 hours a day. I wasn't depressed exactly, just empty. Like I was running on autopilot, waiting for something to matter again. One night I was scrolling through Instagram, ironic I know, and I saw a photo someone posted from the Appalachian Trail, sunrise over a mountain ridge. The caption said, "Day 47, still alive, still walking." Something about that grabbed me. Still alive. Like it was an accomplishment just to keep going. I started researching that night. Read trail journals, watched YouTube videos, joined forums. The more I learned, the more it made sense. The AT wasn't just a hike. It was a reset button. A way to strip everything down to the basics. Walk, eat, sleep, repeat. No emails, no deadlines, no performance reviews, just me and the trail. I spent 3 months preparing, bought gear, studied maps, trained by hiking local trails with a weighted pack. I'm not an outdoorsy person. I'd been camping maybe twice in my life, but I'm a researcher. I like data. I made spreadsheets. I calculated mileage, planned resupply points, read every guide I could find. I thought I was ready. March 15th, I flew to Atlanta, took a shuttle to Amicalola Falls State Park, and started the approach trail to Springer Mountain. That's the southern terminus of the AT. Mile 0. It was cold. Colder than I expected. My pack felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, even though I'd obsessed over every ounce. The approach trail is almost 9 miles all uphill, and by the time I reached Springer, my legs were screaming. But I made it. There's a bronze plaque at the top. Appalachian Trail, Georgia to Maine. I took the obligatory photo, pack on, hiking poles out, trying to look more confident than I felt. There were other hikers there, maybe a dozen, all starting their thru-hike attempts. We were all nervous, all excited, all pretending we knew what we were doing. I met a guy named Tim, trail name Blueprint, because he was an architect. We walked together for the first few miles, swapping stories about why we were there. I just got divorced, he said. Figured I'd walk it off. Fair enough. I met a woman named Casey, trail name Strider, Lord of the Rings fan. She'd been planning this hike for 5 years. It's always been a dream, she said. Finally saved enough money to take the time off. Everyone had their reasons: escape, adventure, healing, proving something to themselves. For me, I just wanted to feel something real again. The first 2 days were hard. Everything hurt: my feet, my shoulders, my legs. I wasn't used to carrying 40 pounds on my back for 8 hours a day. But it was a good kind of pain. The kind that reminded me I had a body, not just a brain that lived in front of a computer. I stayed at shelters both nights. 3-sided wooden structures with sleeping platforms, scattered every 10 to 15 miles along the trail. They're first come, first served. You share space with other hikers, swap stories, compare blisters. It's a culture unto itself, the trail culture. People are friendly in a way that feels almost foreign after living in a city. Everyone's going through the same thing. Everyone understands. Trail names are a big deal. You don't use your real name out here. You earn a trail name, usually based on something you do or something that happens to you. I didn't have one yet. Most people don't for the first few weeks. I was just Alex for now. On the second night at Hawk Mountain Shelter, I sat with a group around a small camp stove. Someone was making ramen. Someone else was patching a hole in their tent. The conversation drifted from gear to weather, to how far everyone planned to hike the next day. Normal stuff. I felt good, tired, sore, but good. Like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I had no idea what was coming. Day 3. I hiked alone that morning. Blueprint had pushed ahead to make up time, and Strider was taking a 0 day in a nearby town to deal with a blister. I didn't mind. Part of the appeal of the trail was the solitude. The weather was perfect. Clear skies, cool breeze. The kind of spring morning that makes you understand why people do this. The trail wound through dense forest, over rocky outcroppings, past streams that sparkled in the sunlight. I stopped for lunch at a clearing with a view, sat on a boulder, ate a protein bar, and just breathed. No traffic, no sirens, no notifications, just wind and birds and the distant sound of water. I could have stayed there all day. But I had miles to cover. I reached Gooch Gap Shelter around 4 in the afternoon. It was empty when I arrived, which was unusual. Most shelters fill up by late afternoon, especially this early in the season when everyone's starting their thru hikes. I dropped my pack, stretched, and started setting up my sleeping pad. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. An old man was walking up the trail, and I mean old. Had to be at least 70. Thin, wiry, with a white beard that reached his chest. He wore faded green pants, a flannel shirt, and a pack that looked like it had been through a war. Duct tape patches, frayed straps, the kind of gear that had seen serious miles. He smiled when he saw me. "Afternoon," he said. His voice was rough, like gravel being dragged across concrete. "Hey," I said, "you staying here tonight?" He nodded, dropped his pack with the ease of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Name's John," he said, sticking out a calloused hand. "Alex," I said, shaking it. "First through hike?" he asked. "That obvious?" He chuckled. "You've got that look. Clean gear, fresh optimism, give it a few 100 miles. I laughed. "How many times have you done this?" 12, he said casually, like it was nothing. I blinked. 12? You've thru-hiked the AT 12 times? "Give or take," he said, pulling out a small camp stove. "Lost count after a while." We cooked dinner together. Well, he cooked. I just boiled water for my dehydrated meal. John made something that actually smelled like food. Rice, beans, spices he carried in small containers. He offered me some. It tasted better than anything I'd eaten in days. We talked as the sun set. He asked about my life, why I was hiking. I gave him the short version, tech burnout, needed a reset. He nodded like he'd heard it 100 times before. "Trail's good for that," he said. "Strips you down, shows you what matters." "Is that why you keep coming back?" I asked. He didn't answer right away, just stared into the small flame of his stove. "Trail's got its own ways," he finally said. "You'll learn." I wasn't sure what that meant, but I didn't press. We built a small fire outside the shelter. Technically not allowed, but John knew how to do it safely. We sat in camp chairs, watching the flames, listening to the forest settle into night. That's when he pulled out the notebook. It was small, maybe 5 by 7 inches, bound in worn leather. The pages were yellowed, dog-eared, filled with handwriting in different inks. He held it for a moment, running his thumb over the cover. "You seem like a smart kid," he said. "Prepared. Done your research." "I try," I said. "Good. But there are things the guidebooks don't tell you." He handed me the notebook. "This might help." I took it, confused, opened it. The first page had a title written in careful script, "Rules for the Appalachian Trail." Below that, 13 numbered entries, each one a single sentence written in the same handwriting. I skimmed the first few. Rule number 1, never hike after sunset. Rule number 2, if you hear your name called, it's not who you think. Rule number 3, don't camp near cairns. I looked up at John. Are these jokes?" He shook his head. "These aren't superstitions, kid. These are survival rules. You don't gotta believe them, just follow them." I flipped through the pages. Some had additional notes scribbled in margins. Some had dates. Some had what looked like incident reports. "Where did this come from?" I asked. "Been passed down," John said, "hiker to hiker, long as I can remember." "And you believe this stuff?" He looked at me with eyes that seemed older than his face. "Belief doesn't matter," he said. "What matters is making it to Maine." I closed the notebook. It felt heavier than it should. I'm not really into supernatural stuff," I said, trying to be polite. "Didn't ask if you were," John said. "Just asked you to keep an open mind." I tucked the notebook into my pack. "Sure, thanks." We sat in silence for a while longer. The fire crackled. Somewhere in the distance, an owl called. "Why are you giving this to me?" I finally asked. John poked the fire with a stick. because someone gave it to me a long time ago, and now it's your turn." "My turn for what?" He didn't answer. Just stood up, stretched, and headed into the shelter. "Get some sleep, Alex," he said. "Long day tomorrow." I stayed by the fire for another hour, thinking about the notebook, about the rules, about how strange John was. But he seemed harmless, eccentric, sure, but harmless. I eventually crawled into my sleeping bag and fell asleep to the sound of John's soft snoring. When I woke up the next morning, he was gone. His gear, his pack, his sleeping pad, all of it, vanished. The only sign he'd been there at all was the faint smell of wood smoke from last night's fire. And the notebook in my pack. I stood there for a long time, staring at the empty space where he'd been. Then I shouldered my pack and started walking. I didn't think much about the notebook for the next few days. It sat at the bottom of my pack, forgotten under layers of gear and food bags. I should have read it more carefully. I should have listened. But I didn't. And that's when things started to go wrong. Day 5 started badly. I woke up late, slept through my alarm somehow, which never happens. By the time I got moving, it was already 8:30. Most thru-hikers are on trail by 7, sometimes earlier. I told myself it was fine. I'd planned a shorter day anyway, only 10 miles to Low Gap Shelter. Easy. Except it wasn't. The trail was rougher than the guidebook suggested. Lots of elevation gain, rocky sections that slowed me down. I stopped for lunch later than I should have, took too long filtering water at a stream. Made the mistake of sitting down for just 5 minutes that turned into 20. By 4 o'clock, I still had 3 miles to go. The sun was already sinking behind the ridgeline. I checked my watch. Sunset was at 6:45. I could make 3 miles in 2 hours. Easy. I'd been averaging 2 miles per hour all day. I picked up my pace. The forest started to change as the light faded. Shadows grew longer, deeper. The temperature dropped. I pulled on my fleece but kept moving. At 6:30, I checked my GPS, still 1.5 miles out. The sun was an orange sliver behind the mountains now. The forest was turning gray. I walked faster. That's when I remembered the notebook. I stopped, pulled out my phone for light, and dug through my pack until I found it. Flipped to the first page. Rule number 1. Never hike after sunset. I stared at it for a moment, looked up at the darkening sky. "It's just a saying," I muttered. "Stay safe, don't hike in the dark. Common sense." I put the notebook away and kept walking. The sun disappeared completely around 6:50. For a few minutes, there was still ambient light. That weird purple-gray twilight where you can see shapes, but not details. The white blazes on the trees were harder to spot. I had to slow down, squint, make sure I wasn't missing a turn. Then even that light faded. I pulled out my headlamp, clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating maybe 20 feet of trail ahead. Everything beyond that was black. I'd hiked at night before, on training hikes back in California, on trails I knew well. But this felt different. The forest was dense here, old. The kind of woods where the canopy blocks out the stars and the trees press in close on both sides. I walked carefully, watching my footing. Roots and rocks I could barely see. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me, I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I turned around, shining my headlamp back down the trail. Nothing. Just trees and darkness. "Hello?" I called out. No answer. Probably just another hiker, I thought. Someone else running late. Maybe they didn't hear me. I started walking again. The footsteps resumed. Same pace, same rhythm. Matching my stride exactly. Crunch, crunch, crunch. I walked faster. The footsteps sped up. My heart started pounding. I told myself it was nothing, just paranoia, just my imagination playing tricks in the dark. But the footsteps were real. I could hear them clearly. Boots on leaves and dirt, maybe 30 feet back. I stopped again. They stopped. "Hey," I shouted, "I know you're there." Silence, just wind through the trees, the sound of my own breathing. I turned and shined my light down the trail again, sweeping it back and forth. Nothing. No one. "This is stupid," I said aloud. "It's just another hiker." But my hands were shaking. I turned back toward the shelter and started walking, fast, almost jogging. The footsteps kept pace. I could hear them clearly now, too clearly, like they were right behind me, matching every step, every movement. I didn't stop again. I just walked. Faster and faster, my pack bouncing on my shoulders, my breath coming in short gasps. The footsteps stayed with me the entire way. After what felt like hours, but was probably only 10 minutes, I saw light ahead. The shelter. A couple of headlamps moving around inside. I practically ran the last 100 yards. The moment I stepped into the clearing around the shelter, the footsteps stopped. I spun around, shining my light back at the trail. Nothing. Empty trail, empty forest. I stood there for a full minute, just watching, waiting for whoever or whatever had been following me to appear. They didn't. "You all right?" a voice asked. I jumped, nearly dropping my light. A woman was standing in the shelter entrance, maybe 40, with short gray hair and kind eyes. Her trail name was stitched on her pack. Wanderer. "Yeah," I managed. "Yeah, I'm fine, just ran late, had to hike in the dark." She nodded sympathetically. "Hate when that happens. You look like you saw a ghost." "Just spooked myself," I said, forcing a laugh. "Dark woods, you know." "Get some rest," she said. "You earned it." I set up my sleeping pad in the corner of the shelter, hands still trembling. There were 3 other hikers there, all already in their sleeping bags. I barely acknowledged them. I pulled out the notebook again. Below it, in smaller handwriting I hadn't noticed before, "Darkness belongs to the trail, not to you." I closed the notebook and shoved it back in my pack. It was just another hiker, I told myself. Someone else running late. They probably turned off at a campsite before reaching the shelter. That had to be it. But deep down, I knew I was lying to myself, because the footsteps had stopped the instant I reached the clearing, and no one had passed me on the trail. I didn't sleep well that night. Day 8 was beautiful. Clear skies, perfect temperature, the trail winding through dense forest that felt almost magical, shafts of sunlight breaking through the canopy, birds singing, a creek babbling somewhere nearby. I was in a good rhythm, the kind of flow state where your mind wanders and your body just moves. I had an audiobook playing, some thriller I'd downloaded before leaving, and I was making good time. The trail in this section was narrow, hemmed in by thick undergrowth on both sides. Rhododendron, mountain laurel, trees so dense you couldn't see more than a few feet off the path. I was maybe 5 miles from the next shelter, completely alone. That's when I heard it. Alex, I stopped, pulled out my earbuds. Alex, Alex, honey. My blood went cold. It was my mom's voice, crystal clear, like she was standing right behind me. I spun around. Nothing, just empty trail. Mom, I called out. No response. My heart was hammering. This didn't make sense. My mom was in California. She didn't even know exactly where I was on the trail. I'd only called her twice since starting, both times from town. Alex, I need help. The voice came from the forest to my left. Closer now, urgent. I took a step toward it. Mom, where are you? Alex, please, I'm hurt. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to go to her, to find her, to help. I took another step off the trail. Then something made me stop. The notebook. I yanked it out of my pack with shaking hands, flipped through the pages until I found it. Rule number 2. If you hear your name called, it's not who you think. I read it twice. Then I read the note below it, written in faded pencil. The woods learn voices. They use what you love. My stomach dropped. Alex! The voice was desperate now, crying. Alex, I can't move, please. I looked at the forest, at the thick undergrowth where the voice was coming from. Then I looked back at the trail. Every fiber of my being wanted to go to that voice, wanted to find my mom, wanted to help. But it wasn't her. It couldn't be. I forced myself to turn back to the trail, to start walking. Alex, don't leave me. I kept walking. Alex, please, I'm so scared. I walked faster, shoving the earbuds back in, turning the audiobook volume up as loud as it would go. But I could still hear her, through the audiobook, through the rushing sound of blood in my ears. Alex! Alex! The voice followed me for 20 minutes, sometimes behind me, sometimes to the side. Sometimes it sounded like it was right next to the trail, just out of sight in the thick brush. It changed too, got more desperate, more panicked. Why won't you help me? I'm bleeding, Alex. There's so much blood. Please don't leave me here to die. That last one almost broke me. I stopped on the trail, tears streaming down my face, fists clenched so hard my nails cut into my palms. It's not real, I told myself. It's not her. It's not real. I'm so cold, honey, so cold. I started running. Just full-on sprinting down the trail, pack bouncing, hiking poles forgotten in my hands. The voice kept pace for a few more minutes. Then finally it started to fade, getting quieter, more distant. Alex, softer now, almost pleading. Please. Then nothing. Just the sound of my footsteps, my ragged breathing, the birds singing like nothing had happened. I ran until my legs gave out. Collapsed against a tree, gasping, sobbing. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually I forced myself to stand, to keep moving, one foot in front of the other. I reached the shelter 2 hours later. There was another hiker there. A guy in his 20s with a scraggly beard. His trail name was MapQuest because he was obsessed with navigation. He looked up when I stumbled into the clearing. Whoa, he said. You okay? You look pale. I dropped my pack, sat down hard on the wooden platform. Did you... I started, then stopped. Did you hear anything weird on the trail today? He frowned. Weird how? Like... voices, someone calling out. He shook his head. Nah, man, been quiet all day. Why? You hear something? I looked at him. His open, friendly face. Completely sincere. Nothing, I said. Never mind. Just my imagination. He shrugged. Happens out here? Isolation does weird things to your head. Yeah, I said, yeah, probably that. But I pulled out the notebook that night, read rule number 2 again and again. If you hear your name called, it's not who you think. The note below it. The woods learn voices. They use what you love. I added my own note in pencil, hands still shaking. Day 8. Heard Mom's voice. Followed rule number 2. It didn't stop for 20 minutes. That night I called my mom from the landline at a nearby hostel. She answered on the 3rd ring. Alex, how's the hike going? Good, I lied. Really good, just wanted to hear your voice. Everything okay, honey? You sound stressed? I'm fine, Mom, just tired, long day. We talked for 10 minutes, about nothing, about everything. About her, garden, and her book club, and my aunt's upcoming surgery. Normal things, real things. When I hung up, I felt better, grounded. But I kept thinking about that voice in the woods, how perfect it had been, how real. And I wondered if I hadn't remembered the rule, where would I be right now? I didn't want to know the answer. Day 12. I'd been making good time all day. Knocked out 15 miles by early afternoon. The weather was perfect, and I felt strong. According to my guidebook, Atani's the next shelter was another 6 miles. But I was tired. My feet hurt, and I'd seen a perfect campsite about a 1/4 mile back, flat, sheltered, near a water source. I decided to stealth camp. That's what hikers call it when you camp off trail, away from designated sites. Technically, you're not supposed to, but plenty of people do it. I backtracked and set up my tent in a small clearing. It was beautiful, surrounded by tall pines, soft ground, a small creek burbling nearby. Perfect. I was inflating my sleeping pad when I noticed them. Rocks. Stacked in a pile about 10 feet from my tent. A cairn. They're common on trails, usually marking routes or summits. And these were maybe 2 feet tall, 5 or 6 flat rocks balanced on top of each other. Something tickled at the back of my mind. The notebook. I dug it out. Rule number 3, don't camp near cairns. I stared at the rocks, then at my tent, already set up, sleeping pad already inflated. I looked at the cairn again. It's just rocks, I thought. Someone probably made it years ago. Hikers stack rocks all the time. I thought about packing up, moving to the shelter 6 miles away. But I was exhausted, and it was getting late, and the next shelter might be full anyway. It's just rocks, I said aloud. I finished setting up camp, cooked dinner, ramen with peanut butter mixed in, a trail hiker trick that actually tastes better than it sounds. Filtered water from the creek. Hung my food bag properly to keep it away from bears. By the time I crawled into my tent, it was almost dark. I felt fine. A little uneasy, maybe, but that was probably just the rule number 1 incident still messing with my head. I was being paranoid. I fell asleep easily. I woke up at 2 a.m. to my tent, shaking, not wind, not an animal brushing against it, shaking, violently, like someone was grabbing the rain fly and yanking it. I sat up, heart pounding, fumbling for my headlamp. Hey, I shouted, what the hell? The shaking stopped. Silence. I clicked on my headlamp. Unzipped the tent slowly. Cold air rushed in. I stuck my head out and looked around. No wind, no animals, nothing that could have shaken the tent. But the cairn? I stared. It was bigger. Way bigger. The cairn that had been 2 feet tall that afternoon was now 4 feet tall, at least. More rocks had appeared. Big ones. Stacked impossibly high in the darkness. What the... I watched, frozen, as one of the rocks near the top shifted, moved on its own. It lifted slightly, rotated, then settled into a new position. Then another rock moved. Slow, deliberate, rearranging itself. The entire cairn was moving, shifting, rebuilding itself. I didn't think. I scrambled back into my tent, yanked the sleeping pad out, stuffed it into my pack with shaking hands, collapsed the tent poles, shoved everything, tent, stakes, food bag, into my pack without organizing anything. The whole time I could hear it. Rocks grinding against each other, slow, patient movements. I got my pack on and ran. Didn't care about following the trail, didn't care about breaking rule number 1. Just ran through the forest with my headlamp bouncing, tree branches whipping my face. I found the trail after what felt like forever, but was probably only 5 minutes. Ran down it in the darkness. 2 miles. Maybe 3. Until I saw light ahead. The shelter. I stumbled into the clearing, gasping, and collapsed on the wooden platform. There were 3 other hikers there, all in their sleeping bags. One of them sat up, bleary-eyed. "Dude, you okay?" "Fine," I managed. "Fine, just had to move, bare at my campsite." A lie, but easier than the truth. "Damn," the hiker said. "That sucks." "Well, there's room here." I set up my stuff with shaking hands. Nobody else woke up. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, after everyone else left, I hiked back to the campsite. I had to see. The clearing looked normal in daylight, peaceful. My tent stakes were still in the ground, where I'd abandoned them. And the cairn, it was small again. 2 feet tall, 5 rocks, normal, like nothing had happened. I walked over to it slowly, started to reach out. Then I saw it. On top of the cairn, a new rock, smooth, black, different from all the others, and carved into its surface, in rough letters, Wanderer, my trail name. The one other hikers had started calling me because I was always stopping to look at maps. I stared at it for a long time. Then I turned and walked away. Left the tent stakes, left the rock, didn't look back. That night in my journal I wrote, "Rule number 3 is real. They all are. I'm not ignoring them anymore. I meant it." Day 18. Blood Mountain, Georgia. I'd been following the rules religiously since the cairn incident. No hiking after dark. No responding to voices. Careful about where I camped. I was learning. Blood Mountain is one of the early challenges on the AT. Steep, rocky elevation gain that makes your lungs burn. But the view from the summit is supposed to be incredible. I started the climb around noon, taking it slow. The trail was well marked. White blazes every 50 feet or so painted on rocks and trees. About halfway up, the trail split. To the left. The usual white blazes marking the official AT. To the right, red blazes, marking what looked like an easier, more maintained trail. I stopped, confused. I'd been on the trail for over 2 weeks now. I knew how it worked. White blazes only. That's the AT. Blue blazes mark side trails to water or viewpoints. Yellow blazes mark alternate roads. But red? I'd never seen red blazes before. I checked my guidebook. No mention of a red blazed alternate route here. I checked my GPS. The AT went left, up the steep rocky section. But the right path looked so much better. Wider, flatter, newer cut. I stood there for 5 minutes trying to decide. That's when another hiker came down from the red trail. Young guy, maybe early 20s, big smile, expensive gear. "Hey," he called out. "You heading up?" "Yeah," I said. Which way did you go? He gestured to the red-blazed trail. This way, so much easier, dude. The white blaze route is brutal. This one's like a sidewalk in comparison. But this is the AT, I said, pointing at the white blazes. They both connect at the summit, he said. Trust me, just hiked it. Why make it harder than it needs to be? He had a point. I looked at the steep, rocky, white-blazed trail, then at the nice, easy, red-blazed one. Then I remembered. The notebook. I pulled it out, flipped through pages until I found it. Rule number 4. The white blazes are the only true path. The note below. Other trails lead elsewhere. I looked up at the hiker. I think I'll stick with the white blazes, I said. He shrugged. Suit yourself, man. Your knees, not mine. He headed down the mountain whistling. I stood there for another minute. Then I shouldered my pack and followed the white blazes. The climb was brutal. He wasn't lying about that. Steep, hand over hand, scrambling in places. My legs burned. I had to stop every few minutes to catch my breath, but I made it. The summit was incredible. 360-degree views. Mountains rolling away in every direction, fading to blue in the distance. There was a stone shelter at the top, an old CCC structure from the 1930s. I dropped my pack and went inside. The trail register was there. A notebook where hikers sign in, leave messages, track their progress. I flipped to the most recent entries. The last one was from 3 days ago. A guy named Strider had written, "Beautiful day. Saw someone on the red trail yesterday heading up. Tried to warn him. Hope he made it." My stomach dropped. I flipped back through more entries. Found another one from a week ago. To whoever's marking that fake trail with red blazes, not funny. Someone's going to get hurt. And another from 2 weeks ago. PSA. There is no red-blazed alternate route up Blood Mountain. If you see one, do not take it. Stick to the white blazes. I closed the register, looked out at the mountains, thought about that hiker I'd met, his expensive gear, his easy smile, his insistence that the red trail was fine. I spent the night in the stone shelter, slept badly. The next morning I hiked down the north side of the mountain. Different route than I'd come up. There was a parking lot at the bottom. A trail angel was there. An older woman with a cooler full of sodas and a car full of snacks. Trail angels are amazing. Volunteers who help hikers just because they can. "Morning," she called out. "You come down from Blood Mountain?" "Yeah," I said, gratefully accepting a Coke. "See anyone else up there?" "Not at the summit," I said, "but I saw a guy yesterday on the Red Blaze Trail, heading down." Her face changed. The smile dropped. "What red trail?" she asked quietly. I described it to her, the split, the blazes, the hiker. She pulled out a map, a real paper map, detailed and marked up with notes. "Show me where," she said. I pointed. She stared at the spot for a long time. "There's no Red Blaze Trail there," she finally said. "But I saw it," I said. "Clear as day. And the guy, what did he look like?" I described him. Young, expensive gear, big smile. She closed her eyes. "Third one this month," she said softly. "Third what?" She opened her eyes. Looked at me. "Missing hiker report. 3 people have gone up Blood Mountain in the last month and never come back down. All 3 were last seen on the south side, where you're describing." My mouth went dry. "But I saw him. He talked to me." "What did he say?" "That the red trail was easier. That they both connected, She shook her head. The trails don't connect. There is no red trail. There never has been. I thought about the notebook, about rule number 4. I didn't take it, I said. I followed the white blazes. She patted my shoulder. Smart kid, very smart. I wanted to ask more questions, wanted to understand. But she just handed me another Coke and turned to greet another hiker coming down the trail. I sat in my car. I'd arranged a shuttle and pulled out the notebook. Added a note under rule number 4, day 18. Blood Mountain. Red trail appeared. Hiker tried to convince me to take it, followed white blazes. Hiker might not have been real. Trail Angel confirmed 3 missing hikers this month. Then I wrote in bigger letters, the rules are not suggestions. I meant it this time, really meant it. Because I was starting to understand. The Appalachian Trail wasn't just a hiking path. It was something older. Something that had its own logic, its own rules. And if you didn't follow them, well, I didn't want to find out. Day 25 started with dark clouds on the horizon. I'd been checking the weather obsessively since morning. A storm system was moving in from the west. Heavy rain, possibly severe. The kind of weather that turns trails into rivers and makes everything miserable. I needed to reach shelter before it hit. According to my guidebook, Hemlock Shelter was 12 miles ahead. I could make it if I pushed hard. I skipped my usual lunch break. Just ate energy bars while walking. Filled my water bottles without stopping for more than a minute. Kept my pace aggressive, ignoring the protests from my legs. The clouds grew darker. The temperature dropped. By 3 o'clock, the first drops started falling. By 4, it was a steady drizzle. I pulled on my rain jacket and kept moving. The trail turned muddy, slippery. I had to watch every step, which slowed me down. My legs were burning. My pack felt like it weighed 100 pounds, but I could see the shelter marker up ahead. I practically ran the last quarter mile. Hemlock Shelter appeared through the trees, and I stopped. It was beautiful, brand new by the look of it. The wood was fresh, unstained. The roof looked solid. There was even a covered overhang with hooks for hanging packs, and it was completely empty. No one. I stood in the rain, staring. This didn't make sense. It was prime camping weather. Everyone should be heading for shelter, and this was a perfect location, right on the trail with a water source nearby. Why was it empty? Something nagged at me. That familiar tickle in the back of my mind. The notebook. I pulled it out, trying to keep it dry under my jacket. Flipped through pages with cold, wet fingers. Rule number 5. If you find a shelter empty at night, there's a reason. The note below, respect the space. I looked at the shelter again, then at the sky. The rain was getting heavier. I thought about hiking another 6 miles to the next shelter, in the rain, in the dark probably. Screw it, I muttered. I was exhausted, I was wet, and it was just a shelter. I went inside. The interior was immaculate, smooth wooden floors, sturdy sleeping platforms, even a small table with benches. Too nice, a voice whispered in my head. I ignored it. I set up my sleeping pad, changed into dry clothes, and cooked dinner on my camp stove. Ramen with a packet of tuna mixed in. It tasted like heaven. The rain hammered on the roof. I was warm, dry, and full. This was fine. By 8 o'clock, I was in my sleeping bag, reading by headlamp. Still no other hikers. Strange, but not impossible. Maybe everyone else had stopped early. Maybe they were camping at the shelter 6 miles back. I turned off my light at 9 and tried to sleep. That's when I heard the voices, multiple voices, outside the shelter, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. Not Spanish, not French, not anything I'd ever heard. The syllables were wrong, too sharp, too guttural. I sat up slowly, heart pounding. The voices continued. A conversation maybe, back and forth. Several speakers, but no footsteps, no sounds of packs being dropped or tents being set up. Just voices. In the darkness. I crawled to the edge of the shelter, staying low, and peeked out. I wish I hadn't. There were figures standing in a circle around the shelter, 7 of them, maybe 8. Hard to tell in the darkness. But they were wrong. Too tall. 7 feet at least, too thin, arms that hung down past their knees, proportions that didn't match any human body I'd ever seen. They were just standing there, not moving, not setting up camp, just standing in the rain, in a perfect circle around the shelter, speaking in that awful language. I pulled back, pressing myself against the far wall. My breath came in short, silent gasps. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit on them. Don't acknowledge them, I thought. Rule number 7. Don't acknowledge them. I forced myself to lie back down, to close my eyes, to pretend I was asleep. The voices continued for hours. I didn't sleep, didn't move. Just lay there in my sleeping bag, eyes squeezed shut, listening to those wrong voices speaking that wrong language. At some point, I checked my watch, 11:47 p.m., then again, 1:23 a.m., then again, 2:58 a.m., still talking, still standing there. Around 3 a.m., the voices stopped. Just cut off mid-sentence silence. I waited, barely breathing. Then I heard movement, not footsteps exactly. More like sliding, dragging, moving away from the shelter, back into the woods. The sounds faded, gone. I didn't move for another hour, didn't dare. Finally, around 4:30, when the sky started to lighten, I allowed myself to breathe normally. I packed everything in record time. Didn't bother rolling my sleeping pad properly. Just shoved everything into my pack and got out of there. The rain had stopped. The forest was quiet. Morning birds were starting to sing. Everything looked normal. Except, I glanced back at the shelter as I left. In the daylight, it didn't look new anymore. The wood looked weathered, old. Some of the boards were warped. Had it looked like that last night? I couldn't remember. I hiked fast. Didn't stop until I'd put a mile between myself and that shelter. That's when I saw another hiker coming up the trail. Older guy, maybe 50. Trail name Speedy on his pack. "Morning," he called out cheerfully. "Morning," I managed. "You come from Hemlock?" he asked. I nodded. His expression changed. "You stayed there?" "Yeah, why?" He stared at me. "Nobody stays at Hemlock. You didn't know?" "Know what?" He pulled off his pack, dug out a water bottle, took a long drink, like he was buying time. 6 people disappeared from that shelter back in the 90s, he finally said. Separate incidents. Over the course of maybe 3 years, all of them were hiking alone. All of them checked into the shelter log. None of them checked out. My stomach dropped. They closed the shelter, he continued. Tore it down, actually, around 1997, I think. But it's there, I said. I just stayed in it. It's new. He shook his head slowly. Hemlock Shelter hasn't existed for almost 30 years, kid. They built a new shelter 6 miles north to replace it. Then what did I sleep in? He didn't answer. Just looked at me with something between pity and fear. "You're lucky," he finally said. Very lucky. He shouldered his pack and kept hiking. I stood there for a long time, staring back down the trail. Then I pulled out the notebook and wrote, Day 25, Hemlock Shelter, Rule number 5. It was empty for a reason. I stayed anyway. They came. I survived. Don't ignore the rules. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely read my own writing. Day 32, crossing into North Carolina. I was feeling good. Better than I had in days. The hemlock incident had rattled me, but I'd put some distance between myself and Georgia now. New state. Fresh start. The weather was perfect. The trail was smooth. I was making excellent time. That's when I saw it. A walking stick. Beautiful. Perfect. Straight as an arrow, exactly the right height, with a natural grip at the top where a branch had broken off. It was just lying there on the side of the trail like someone had left it for me. I stopped. My current trekking poles were fine, but this was different. This was a proper hiking staff, the kind you see in old photos, traditional, solid. I reached for it, then stopped. The notebook. I didn't even need to pull it out. I'd read the rules so many times by now, I had them memorized. Rule number 6. Don't take anything from the woods. The note below. Everything has an owner. I looked at the stick again. It's just wood, I thought. Dead wood. Fallen branch. Nobody owns this. I stood there for a full minute arguing with myself. Finally, I grabbed it. It's just wood, I said aloud. This is stupid. The stick felt good in my hand, solid, well balanced. I shouldered my pack and kept walking, stick in hand. Within 10 minutes, I felt it. Being watched. That prickling sensation on the back of your neck. That certainty that something is looking at you. I glanced over my shoulder. Nothing, just empty trail. But the feeling didn't go away. Then I heard rustling in the bushes to my left. I stopped. Looked. Nothing visible. But something was definitely there. Moving parallel to me, just out of sight in the undergrowth. Rule number 7. If something follows you, don't acknowledge it. I kept walking, eyes forward, grip tight on the walking stick. The rustling continued. Sometimes left, sometimes right, always just out of sight. I tried to ignore it, but it was getting harder. Whatever was following me was getting bolder, coming closer to the trail. I caught glimpses now, something gray, low to the ground, hunched, not an animal. The movements were wrong, too deliberate, too purposeful. 2 other hikers passed me going the opposite direction. Hey, one of them called out. You doing okay? Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. Why? You keep looking over your shoulder? Nervous about something? No, I'm fine, just thought I heard something. They glanced at the forest, then back at me. Don't see anything, one said. You sure you're all right? Yeah, I'm good. They hiked on. The moment they were out of sight, the rustling resumed. By the time I reached that night's shelter, I was a wreck, jumping at every sound, looking over my shoulder constantly. The shelter was crowded. 6 other hikers already there, cooking dinner, chatting. Normal, safe. I set up my sleeping area in the corner and tried to relax. But I could still feel it outside the shelter, in the darkness beyond the firelight. Watching. The other hikers didn't notice. They were laughing, sharing food, telling trail stories. But I heard it, breathing, low and wet, just outside, then scraping like claws on wood. I gripped the walking stick. It was the only thing that felt real, solid. Around midnight, everyone else was asleep. The scraping continued, slow, patient, testing the walls of the shelter. I realized something. It wanted the stick back. That's what this was. That's why it had followed me all day. The stick wasn't mine to take. At 2 a.m, I made my decision. I crawled out of my sleeping bag as quietly as I could. The other hikers didn't stir. I took the walking stick and stepped outside the shelter. The scraping stopped immediately. I couldn't see anything, just darkness and trees, but I felt it. Close, very close. I placed the stick on the ground about 10 feet from the shelter entrance. Then I backed away slowly. For a moment, nothing happened. Then something moved in the darkness. Low. Fast. The stick was gone. Just gone. Like it had never been there. The feeling of being watched disappeared. I stood there for a minute, heart pounding, then went back inside the shelter. Crawled into my sleeping bag. The scraping didn't return. In the morning, I checked outside. The stick was gone, but there were marks on the wall of the shelter, deep gouges, claw marks, 4 parallel lines, inches from where my head had been while I slept. None of the other hikers commented on them. I don't think they could see them, but I could. I wrote in the notebook that morning, Rule Zucker 6 and number 7, don't take, don't acknowledge. I broke number 6. Something followed me. Had to return what I took. The marks on the wall. I think it was giving me a warning, or showing me what would have happened if I hadn't given it back. I never took anything from the woods again. Day 40. I'd been hiking alone for most of the journey, but that changed when I met Sarah. She was a section hiker, just doing 100 miles or so, and she had a dog with her, a golden retriever named Maple. I met them at a road crossing. Sarah was refilling water bottles from a stream, and Maple was lying in the shade, panting happily. "Hey," Sarah called out when she saw me. "You heading north?" "Yeah," I said. "You?" "For another few days. Mind if we join you?" Maple's been getting bored with just me for company. Maple stood up at the mention of her name, tail wagging. I hesitated. I'd gotten used to being alone, used to following the rules without having to explain myself. But the dog? "Sure," I said, "a company would be nice." Maple was the perfect trail dog, well-trained, stayed on the path, didn't bark at every squirrel. Sarah told me she'd been hiking with Maple for years. "She knows the trail better than I do," Sarah said with a laugh. We hiked together for 2 days. It was nice. Sarah was easy to talk to, and Maple was calming. There's something about dogs that makes everything feel safer. On the afternoon of the second day, we were approaching Big Cedar Shelter. We'd made good time. The weather was perfect. Everyone was in good spirits. Then Maple stopped, just froze in the middle of the trail. "Come on, girl," Sarah said, "just a little further." Maple didn't move. Her hackles were up, her ears flat against her head. A low growl rumbled in her throat. I'd never seen her do that. "Maple," Sarah said, concerned. "What's wrong?" The dog was staring straight ahead, at the trail, at something we couldn't see. I felt it then. That familiar cold dread in my stomach. I pulled out the notebook. Rule number 8. Trust your dog. The note below. They see what you can't. "We need to stop," I said. Sarah looked at me. "What? Why? The shelter's only half a mile ahead." "She's telling us not to go," I said, gesturing at Maple. "Look at her." Maple's growl had gotten louder. She was backing up now, pulling against her leash. "She's probably just tired," Sarah said, "or she smells a bear or something. We'll be fine." "No," I said firmly. We need to listen to her. Sarah frowned. Alex, we've been hiking for 8 hours. I'm exhausted. The shelter is right there. I looked at Maple, at her stance, at the fear in her eyes. I'm not going, I said, and we need to camp back here, half a mile back. There is a flat spot. That's ridiculous. Please, I said, and something in my voice must have gotten through to her. Sarah looked at me, then at Maple, then back at me. You're serious, she said. Dead serious, she sighed. Fine, but you're explaining this to me over dinner. We backtracked half a mile and made camp in a small clearing off the trail. It wasn't ideal, no water source nearby rocky ground, but it felt safe. Maple relaxed the moment we stopped. Lay down, tail wagging again. That night after we'd eaten, Sarah asked me to explain. I showed her the notebook, told her everything, the rules, the incidents, all of it. She listened without interrupting. So you think something's wrong with the shelter? She finally said. I think Maple knows something we don't, I said, and rule number 8 says to trust dogs. She looked at Maple, who was curled up by the tent, peaceful. Okay, Sarah said quietly. Okay. We settled in for the night. Around 11, Maple's head snapped up. She was staring back toward the trail, toward where the shelter was, alert, tense, but not scared, just watchful. At midnight, we heard it, screaming, coming from the direction of the shelter. But it wasn't human screaming. It was wrong. The pitch was off. The rhythm was wrong. Like someone or something was trying to imitate a human scream and getting it almost right, but not quite. It went on for 15 minutes. High-pitched wails, then lower moans, then that awful screaming again. Sarah grabbed my arm. What the hell is that? I don't know, I whispered. Maple didn't bark, didn't growl. Just watched the darkness, ears forward. The screaming finally stopped. Silence. Then, very faintly, we heard something else. Laughter. Wrong laughter. Too many voices at once, overlap as the timing off. Then that stopped too. Maple relaxed, put her head down, closed her eyes. Whatever it was over. Neither Sarah nor I slept much that night. In the morning, we packed up in silence. Do we have to go past it? Sarah asked. It's the only way forward, I said. We approached the shelter carefully. Maple walked between us, calm but watchful. The shelter appeared through the trees. We both stopped. It was wrong. The boards were rotted. The roof had partially collapsed. Moss and vines covered everything. It looked like it had been abandoned for decades. That can't be right, Sarah said. She pulled out her guidebook. This shows Big Cedar as an active shelter. Maintained. I checked yesterday. I walked closer. The trail register was inside, lying on the collapsed sleeping platform. I picked it up carefully. The pages were yellow, brittle. I opened it. The last entry was dated June 15th, 1987. Having a great time, weather perfect, heading to Damascus tomorrow. Wildflower. Nothing after that. Nothing for almost 40 years. This isn't possible, Sarah whispered. Maple whined. She wouldn't go near the shelter, stayed back on the trail waiting for us. I took photos, documentation, proof. But even as I did it, I knew the photos wouldn't show what we were seeing. They never did. What is this place? Sarah asked quietly. I thought about the screaming, the laughter, the empty decades in the register. Somewhere we shouldn't be, I said. We left quickly, didn't look back. A mile down the trail, we passed another hiker. "Hey, how was Big Cedar?" he asked cheerfully. Sarah and I looked at each other. "Closed," I said. "Shelter's damaged. We camped before it." "Oh, that sucks," the hiker said. "Thanks for the heads up." He kept walking. That night, Sarah asked to see the notebook again. She read through all the rules, all my notes. "This is real," she said, not a question, a statement. "Yeah," I said, "it's real." "What do we do?" "We keep walking, we follow the rules, we make it to Maine." She looked at Maple, who was sleeping peacefully by the fire. "And we trust the dog," she added. "And we trust the dog," I agreed. Sarah hiked with me for 3 more days. Then her section was done and she had to get back to her life. Before she left, she asked for a copy of the rules. I wrote them out for her by hand, all 13. "Just in case I come back," she said. "Follow them," I said. "All of them." "I will." She hugged me. Maple licked my hand. Then they were gone. I stood there for a while, watching them drive away. I was alone again. But I wasn't the same person who'd started this hike 43 days ago. That person wouldn't have trusted a dog over his own eyes. That person wouldn't have believed in rules written in an old notebook. That person thought he understood how the world worked. I knew better now. The trail was teaching me, and I was learning fast. Day 48. Virginia. Everything went wrong at once. I woke up to snow. Not the light, dusting you see in movies. Heavy, wet snow that had been falling all night. My tent was half buried. The temperature had dropped to 20 degrees. This wasn't supposed to happen. It was late April, spring. The weather forecast had said rain, maybe, not snow. But the mountains don't care about forecasts. I packed up in near whiteout conditions. My fingers were numb. Everything I owned was wet or getting wet. The trail was invisible under 6 inches of fresh powder. I needed to move. Needed to get to lower elevation before this got worse. But I'd started late. Lost time digging my tent out. Lost more time trying to find the trail. By the time I got moving, it was already past noon. The snow kept falling. I checked my GPS every few minutes. The next shelter was 8 miles away. I could make it. I had to make it. But the trail was slow. Every step was a struggle. The snow hid roots and rocks. I kept slipping, catching myself, moving forward. 4 o'clock. Still 4 miles to go. 5 o'clock. 2 miles. The sun was setting. I could feel it even through the clouds and snow. That change in light. That darkening. Rule number 1. Never hike after sunset. I knew I was breaking it, but I had no choice. Camping in this weather would be death. Hypothermia. I'd read the statistics, I'd read the stories, I kept moving. The white blazes were impossible to see, snow covered them. I had to navigate by GPS alone, hoping I was still on trail. That's when I started seeing the cairns everywhere. Piles of rocks appearing out of the snow like gravestones. Some small, some huge, some fresh, some ancient. Rule number 3. Don't camp near cairns. But they were everywhere. On both sides of the trail, in front of me, behind me, I was surrounded. "Just rocks," I whispered, "just markers." But my hands were shaking and not from the cold. Then I heard it. "Alex." My name, clear as day. Through the snow and wind, my mom's voice. Rule number 2. If you hear your name called, it's not who you think. "Alex, I'm so proud of you." I kept walking, eyes forward. Don't acknowledge, don't respond. Alex, you're almost there, just a little further. The voice was warm, loving. Everything I wanted to hear. I wanted to answer, wanted to turn around. I didn't. But then I heard something else. Footsteps. Behind me. Matching my pace. Rule number 7. If something follows you, don't acknowledge it. Multiple rules, all at once. I was hiking after dark through a field of cairns, while voices called my name and something followed me through the snow. My breath came in ragged gasps. My legs were shaking. I could feel panic rising in my throat. The rules weren't working. They weren't protection anymore. The rules aren't protection, I said aloud, my voice cracking. They're just guidelines for a game I don't understand. And I didn't understand any of this. The notebook had kept me alive, yes, but it hadn't explained anything, hadn't told me what I was dealing with, what the trail really was. I was just following instructions blind, hoping they'd keep me safe. But right now they were all breaking at once and I didn't know what to do. Alex, please, I'm here. I'm right here. The footsteps got closer. The cairns seemed to lean in. I ran. Didn't think, didn't plan, just ran through the snow, pack bouncing, breath burning in my lungs. I ran until I saw a light ahead. The shelter. I burst into the clearing and collapsed. There were 2 other hikers there, huddled around a small camp stove, looking at me with alarm. Jesus, man, you okay? I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, just nodded. One of them helped me inside, got me out of my wet clothes, gave me hot tea. I sat there shaking for an hour. The other hikers exchanged glances but didn't ask questions. Trail culture. Everyone's got their own demons out here. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the rules, about how they'd all failed at once. Or maybe they hadn't failed. Maybe I'd survived because I knew them. Because even when they were all breaking, I'd known what was happening. Had known not to respond to the voices, not to acknowledge what followed. Maybe the rules weren't about prevention. Maybe they were about recognition, about knowing what you were dealing with. I pulled out the notebook and stared at it for a long time. Then I flipped to the last page. Rule number 13. I'd never read it carefully before. Always focused on the first 12. But now I looked. Really looked. The handwriting was different. The first 12 rules were in the same careful script. Faded ink, old paper. But rule number 13 was newer, different pen, darker ink, like someone had added it recently. Rule number 13. If you make it past Damascus, burn this notebook. The trail has learned your face. I read it 3 times. Damascus, Virginia. Mile 469 of the Appalachian Trail, the unofficial capital of the AT. Home to Trail Days, the biggest thru-hiker festival on the entire trail, a major milestone. I checked my GPS. I was at mile 465, 4 miles away. I'd reach Damascus tomorrow, and then what? Burn the notebook? But why? I stared at the rule, trying to understand. The trail has learned your face. What did that mean? I lay back down, exhausted, and eventually fell into uneasy sleep. That's when I saw him. Trail John. We were sitting by a campfire, but not at any shelter I recognized. The forest around us was different, older. The trees were massive, ancient. The stars above were wrong. Too many, too bright. You've done well, Alex, John said. His voice was the same, gravel and warmth. Is this real? I asked. Real enough. I looked at my hands. They seemed solid, but the firelight moved wrong, casting shadows that didn't match. "What is this?" I asked. "What are these rules?" John poked the fire with a stick. Sparks rose into that impossible sky. "Balance," he said simply. "The trail takes, the trail gives. Rules maintain balance." Balance between what? Between the old things and the new. Between what was here before humans and what came after. He looked at me. "The trail is old, Alex. Older than you know. It remembers when these mountains were different, when different things walked here. The things I've seen are still here. They never left. They just learned to hide, to be careful." He smiled slightly. "The rules teach hikers to be careful too, to recognize, to respect." I thought about that. "What happens if I burn the notebook?" I asked. John was quiet for a moment. "You'll be free," he finally said. "The trail will release its claim. You can finish your hike, go home, live your life. And if I don't burn it," his eyes met mine, "the trail never forgets." A chill ran down my spine. "You mean it'll keep testing me?" "The trail doesn't test, it simply is. But yes, if you keep the notebook, you remain connected, part of the system. You'll see things others don't, feel things they can't." He paused. "It's not a punishment. It's a responsibility." "But someone else will need it," I said, remembering the rest of the rule. John nodded. "Someone always does. That's how it works. The notebook gets passed down, hiker to hiker, generation to generation. Like you passed it to me." "Yes." I looked at the fire, at the impossible stars. "Did you burn it?" I asked. "When you reached Damascus?" John smiled. It was sad and knowing. "I'm still here, aren't I?" I woke up. The shelter was dark. The other hikers were sleeping. Snow was still falling outside. But I felt different, clearer. I knew what I had to do. Day 50, Damascus, Virginia. I walked into town mid-afternoon. The snow had melted, the weather had turned warm again, spring reasserting itself. Damascus is a trail town. The whole place exists for hikers, outfitters, hostels, restaurants that understand hiker hunger. Confederate flags and rainbow flags flying side by side because trail culture transcends normal politics. It felt surreal, normal, crowded, alive. After weeks in the woods dealing with impossible things, Damascus felt like returning to reality. I got a room at a hostel, took a shower that lasted 40 minutes, ate a burger the size of my head, did laundry, called my mom. "You sound good," she said, stronger. "I am," I said, and meant it. That night, there was a bonfire at the hostel. Tradition. Hikers gathering, swapping stories, comparing gear. I sat on a log, watching the flames, holding the notebook. I'd carried it for 50 days, 47 nights, through Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, now Virginia. It had saved my life, multiple times. But it had also changed me. I thought about what Trail John had said, about balance, about responsibility, about being free versus being connected. A young hiker sat down next to me, maybe 22, fresh gear, excited eyes. "Hey," they said, "I'm Taylor. Trail name pending, just started last week." "Alex," I said, "trail name Wanderer." "What's that?" Taylor asked, pointing at the notebook. I looked at it, every rule, every note, every incident carefully documented. My handwriting mixed with older handwriting, mixed with handwriting, even older than that. A record, a warning, a guide. "Someone gave this to me," I said slowly. At the start of my hike. Taylor leaned closer. What is it? I opened it, showed them the first page. Rules for the Appalachian Trail. They read the first few, smiled. Is this like a joke? They asked. Trail superstitions? I thought about that night in the shelter, the figures standing in the rain. I thought about the voices, the cairns, the red-blazed trail that didn't exist. I thought about Maple, refusing to go forward, about the walking stick I'd had to return, about hiking through snow while breaking every rule at once. You don't have to believe them, I said, echoing words spoken to me 7 weeks ago. Just consider following them. Taylor looked skeptical but curious. Why? I stood up, walked toward the fire. The flames were high, hot. I could feel the heat on my face. I held the notebook over the fire. This was it. The moment of choice. Burn it. Be free, finish the hike, and go home. And forget all of this. Or pass it on. Stay connected. Accept the responsibility. I thought about all the hikers who would come after me. Young, naive, unprepared for what the trail really was. I thought about the people who'd gone missing, the ones who didn't have the rules, who didn't know. I lowered the notebook. Carefully, precisely, I tore out the pages with my personal notes, my observations, my experiences. Those were mine, my story, my journey. I fed them to the fire one by one, watched them curl and blacken and turn to ash. But the original 13 rules, written in that careful old script, those I kept. I turned back to Taylor. Here, I said, handing them the notebook. Someone gave this to me, said it might help. They took it, uncertain. Rules for what? They asked. I looked at the fire, at the other hikers laughing and drinking and celebrating, at the darkness beyond the firelight, at the mountains waiting. Survival, I said quietly. Taylor opened the notebook, started reading. I watched their expression change. Skepticism to curiosity to unease. Have you experienced any of these things? They asked. I didn't answer directly. Follow the rules, I said, all of them, even the ones that sound crazy, especially those ones. But trust me. Something in my voice must have gotten through. Taylor nodded slowly. Okay, they said. Okay, I will. I stood there for a moment longer, watching them read. Then I walked away from the fire. Back to the hostel, back to my bunk. I lay there in the dark, feeling lighter. The notebook was gone, passed on. The responsibility transferred. But Trail John's words echoed in my head. If you keep the notebook, you remain connected. I'd given it away, but I still remembered every rule, every word, every note. I'd carried it for 50 days. It was part of me now. And deep down, I knew. The trail hadn't released me. Maybe it never would. Outside, the bonfire crackled, hikers laughed, and in the distance, beyond the town lights, the mountains waited. Still old, still watching, still keeping their secrets. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow I'd keep walking. Mile 469 to mile 2190. Over 1,700 miles to go, and every single one of them on a trail that knew my face. 3 weeks later, mile 800. Pennsylvania. The rocks here are different, sharper. They call it Rocksylvania for a reason. Every step is a negotiation with ankle-breaking boulders, but I'm still here, still moving forward. I'm different now, more cautious, more aware. I see things other hikers don't notice. Like the way the forest goes quiet sometimes, not gradually, suddenly, like someone flipped a switch. Other hikers keep walking, oblivious, headphones in, heads down. I stop, I wait, I listen. and whatever was there moves on. I understand now why some hikers quit suddenly, why they show up at a hostel one day and say, "I'm done, I'm going home." Everyone assumes it's injury or homesickness or just the physical toll. Sometimes it is, but sometimes they saw something, felt something, and decided they didn't want to know what it meant. I don't blame them. The trail has become alive to me, not metaphorically, actually alive. I feel it watching, testing, remembering. Sometimes I find cairns that weren't there the day before, small offerings left at the base, coins, feathers, small pieces of colored glass. I don't touch them. I walk past, eyes forward. Sometimes I hear my name. Different voices, my mom, my dad. Once, my own voice, calling from deeper in the woods. I never respond, never turn around. Just keep walking. Sometimes I see red blazes on trees leading off trail, looking inviting. I always choose white. Always. Other hikers ask me questions now. How are you still going? Aren't you exhausted? How do you make it look so easy? What's your secret? I usually shrug. Give them trail advice, gear tips, calorie counts. But sometimes, when they press, I say, "I learned the rules." They laugh. Think I'm talking about leave no trace, about proper food storage, about pace and rest days. I let them think that. It's easier. Yesterday I passed a hiker sitting on a rock, staring into the forest. "You okay?" I asked. He looked at me. His eyes were haunted. "Do you ever feel like something's watching you out here?" "Yes," I said simply. He seemed relieved, like he'd been waiting for someone to confirm it. I thought I was going crazy. "You're not." "Then what is it?" I thought about how to answer that, about the notebook I no longer carried, about Trail John and the 13 rules and everything I'd learned. "The trail," I finally said. "It's older than we are. Older than the markers and the maps. It has its own nature." He nodded slowly. "What do I do?" "Be respectful. Be aware. Don't take anything that isn't yours. Don't go where you're not supposed to go." I paused. "And if something feels wrong, trust that feeling." "That's it?" "That's enough." He hiked with me for a few miles, didn't talk much, just walked. When we parted ways at a trail junction, he seemed steadier, more grounded. "Thanks," he said. "Stay safe," I replied. I watched him disappear down the trail. I've become something I didn't expect. Not a hunter, not a ranger, a guide maybe, a keeper of knowledge, someone who knows the rules. Male 820. 2 days later. I met them at a shelter. Late afternoon, they'd arrived before me, were sitting outside with their head in their hands. Young. Maybe 25. Expensive gear that looked barely used. I recognized that look. That exhaustion that isn't just physical. "Hey," I said, dropping my pack. "You all right?" They looked up. "Yeah, no, I don't know." I sat down on the picnic table, pulled out my water bottle. "What's going on?" They hesitated. Then, "This trail is weird." "Weird how?" "I keep seeing things, hearing things. Last night I heard my sister calling me, but she's in Colorado. She couldn't be here." My stomach tightened. "Did you answer?" I asked. "Yeah," I called back, tried to find her. They looked at me. There was no one there. Rule number 2. "What else?" I asked quietly. "I found this perfect campsite a few days ago. Had these stacked rocks. Woke up in the middle of the night and they'd moved. Gotten bigger. Rule number 3. And yesterday I saw this trail, red markings. looked way easier than the regular path. But when I checked my map, it wasn't there. Rule number 4. They were breaking multiple rules without knowing it, without guidance, just like I had been before Trail John. You need to be more careful, I said. Careful how? I looked at them, saw myself 2 months ago, skeptical, rational, unprepared. I didn't have the notebook anymore. I'd passed it to Taylor back in Damascus, but I had my memory. I pulled out my journal, tore out a blank page from the back, started writing the 13 rules from memory, in my own handwriting now. Rule number 1, never hike after sunset. Rule number 2, if you hear your name called, it's not who you think. Rule number 3, don't camp near cairns. I wrote them all, every single one. When I finished, I handed the paper to them. Follow these, I said. Don't ask why, just do it. They read the list, and their expression changed from confusion to disbelief. This is crazy, they said. Yeah, I agreed. It is, but it works. You seriously believe this stuff? I thought about the figures in the rain, about the cairn that grew, about the red trail that didn't exist, about hiking through snow while breaking every rule at once. I've experienced it, I said simply. Every rule on that list? I learned it the hard way. They stared at the paper. What happens if I don't follow them? I don't know. I always followed them. Eventually. I paused. But other hikers haven't, and some of them didn't make it. That got through. They folded the paper carefully, put it in their pocket. Thank you, they said quietly. Stay safe out there. They nodded. We didn't hike together. They left before me the next morning, did you, eager to put miles between themselves and whatever they'd experienced. I hope they follow the rules. I hope the paper I gave them is enough. But I know it might not be. Some people need to experience it themselves. Need to be tested. The trail decides, not me. Mile 850, Pennsylvania, still hiking. I camp alone tonight, find a flat spot with a good view, set up my tent, filter water, cook dinner. The routine is comforting now, familiar. Above me the stars are emerging. Clear sky. Beautiful night. I open my journal, write my daily entry. Mile 850, Pennsylvania, still alive. I stare at those words for a moment, then I add something else. Rule number 14. Never hike the same trail twice. The trail remembers. I don't know if that's a real rule. Maybe I just invented it, or maybe the trail is teaching me new ones. I came to the Appalachian Trail to escape, to find myself, to disconnect from technology, from stress, from the life that is burning me out. I found something else instead. The trail isn't just a path through mountains. It isn't just white blazes and shelters and mile markers. It's old. Older than the blazes, older than the maps, older than the towns and the roads and the people who think they know these mountains. And it has rules. Not our rules. Its rules. I still don't know what Trail John was, if he was ever human, if he's still out there somewhere, passing the notebook to another lost hiker. I don't know what those things in the woods are. The figures in the rain. The voices that call names. The trails that appear and disappear. I don't know why the rules work. Why following them keeps you safe. What cosmic balance they maintain. But I know this. The Appalachian Trail is 2,190 miles of beauty, challenge, and wonder. It's also 2,190 miles of something else. Something that watches, something that tests, something that remembers. I still have over 1,000 miles to go through Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. 1,300 miles of mountains and forests, and whatever else is waiting, but I'm not scared anymore. I'm aware, I'm careful, I'm respectful, and I know the rules. I close my journal, zip it into my pack. The forest around me is dark now. The fire I built has burned down to embers. In the trees, just at the edge of my vision, I see movement, shapes, watching. They've always been there. Every night, every camp. I just didn't see them before. Now I do. I don't look directly at them. Don't acknowledge them. Rule number 7, I just finish my tea, bank the fire, crawl into my tent. Tomorrow I'll hike another 15 miles, and the next day another 15, until I reach Katahdin, until I finish, if I finish. The trail will decide. It always does. I close my eyes. Outside, the forest breathes and watches and remembers.